Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video I aim to answer one question. Why are so many top players suddenly starting to use Rainy Castform? Rainy Castform is a Pokemon that hasn't had open Great League play in many seasons since the Weather Ball meta, and yet against all odds, it cropped up a ton last weekend and I saw it even more today. So today, I'm going to be building an open Great League team around Rainy Castform. Rainy Castform, Licky and Tinkaton, taking it to the Go Battle League and trying to figure out why this Pokemon is suddenly starting to climb in popularity. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's go Rainy Castform. Hopping into game number 1, we pick up a pretty neutral lead, Rainy Castform into Pangoro. Considering I have a Licky in the back, I need to stay in this matchup at all costs and get rid of the Panda. I decide to call the bait, they end up going for the Night Slash, but unfortunately, I try and throw 5 water guns at the Weather Ball, and I accidentally throw 6, and I play to a CMP tie that I do not win. It started off really well with the bait call, but playing to that CMP tie definitely not ideal. Pangoro is going to no shield, they try and make another move, but the water gun pressure is just simply too oppressive. My opponent doesn't send in a Pokemon just yet, they wait down the timer, they're going to be bringing in a Tinkaton, and look at how much energy I already have on Rainy Castform. If my opponent doesn't instantly bulldoze here, I'm going to get to a second Weather Ball, and suddenly, they're going to be very, very low. I'm very, very happy to get this much damage on a Tinkaton. Tinkaton is going to overfarm, and they've lost 80% of a Tinkaton and an entire Pangoro just from Rainy Castform. Bulldoze will take the knockout. I send in Licky, and I'm just going to look to overfarm quite a lot of energy. Anytime I see Pangoro, I usually assume the final Pokemon is going to be a Grumpig. My opponent switches out, and there is the Grumpig right on cue. Grumpig feels a lot of pressure to shield Shadow Balls here, so I will go for the Body Slam bait, getting the shield, reaching for the Shadow Ball, but Grumpig is barely going to outpace, and that's going to pressure away my final shield. Dynamic Punch would easily take the knockout, but I cannot afford to let this energy go to waste. I need shields down to set up my Tinkaton for the endgame. My Tinkaton was put in a very good position by the Castform, basically knocking out 2 of their Pokemon. Now, Tinkaton just needs to land a Gigaton Hammer onto the Grumpig. Grumpig lands Dynamic Punch, I overfarm, firing off the Gigaton Hammer, and this will come very close to knocking out the Grumpig. Gigaton connects. It looks like Gigaton Hammer actually got a new animation from the last time I played this Pokemon. I was not expecting to see the Gigaton Hammer just get launched across the screen and smite away the opponent. Down goes Grumpig, and that's a good game. We move to game number 2, picking up a pretty decent lead, Rainy Castform into Unova Stunfisk. My backline is not a big fan of Stunfisk, so neutralizing it early on the lead would be a very big win. It looks like I won't quite be able to win the zeros here, the super effective discharge spam is too much, but I should be able to tank 1, shield 1, and then water gun all the way down after landing my Weather Ball. Usually a Stunfisk lead is one of 2 things in the back. Flying types, which Licky would be good into, or a Shadow Bug Bite Fortress. Looks like my opponent has opted for the latter as they set in the Fortress. I'm going to fire off the Weather Ball, but I do not want to concede the farm down. Instead, I pivot into Licky. The reason why pivoting out there was so important is this will allow me to outpace the Fortress and make the Shadow Ball before they get the Rock Tomb. Shadow Ball will be shielded. My opponent can go for the Rock Tomb, but they're simply not going to be able to do enough damage to my Licky before I can make Shadow Ball number 2. And even at -1 attack, this Shadow Ball should still come very close to securing the knockout. So I fire off the Shadow Ball, they double shield, and this works out pretty nicely for me. I have Tinkaton in exactly the spot it wants to be in, up a shield. Even though they're going to get to debuff me with a Sand Tomb, I am still not going to be shielding. Instead, I'm going to overfarm slightly, launch the Bulldoze, and Bulldoze should just about be ticket the knockout. So I have Tinkaton, up energy, up a shield. What do they have in the back? I guess we're never going to know, as my opponent will resign the match. We move to game number 3, and we get the dream lead, Rainy Castform into Shadow Kanto Ninetales. My opponent pivots out, safe switching into a Shadow Malamar, and I'm going to respond with Tinkaton. So far, this is about the best start anyone could ever ask for in a game of Go Battle League. A dominant lead win, both my Licky and my Castform are going to do very well there, and I have my Tinkaton to answer the Malamar. They land Superpower, I land Gigaton Hammer. That new animation is still just absolutely hilarious, and I'm still so healthy on the Tinkaton that I don't think they can farm me down before I reach a second Bulldoze. Bulldoze does not get the debuff this time. I make the Bulldoze, but I will lose charge attack priority, so I'm very okay just with letting this go. I'm going to bring back in the Castform and shield if they end up going for an Energy Ball, but they don't. They pivot out, and it's going to be Pangoro in the back. This is a very big problem. I cannot afford to let Pangoro see Licky. Pangoro landed the Night Slash that already did some pretty massive damage, and my opponent does have a bunch of energy stored on the Ninetales in the back. Without the energy head start that I had on the Castform, all would be lost, but Castform is actually putting up a pretty nice fight. Night Slash will grab the shield. I fire back with the Weather Ball. My opponent will be able to pressure my final shield before I get my Weather Ball, but they're not going to be able to make it to a second Night Slash before I make the move. This is going to force them to go for the combo play if I put up the shield. This means my Castform is going to get KO'd, but this is exactly what I was hoping for, because now the Pangoro is off the field. It doesn't have a charge stack loaded, and I can just bring in the Licky Licky. The win con for me now is pretty clear. Double up on body slams. The Ninetales lands the overheat that does huge damage, but they are in body slam range, and so is the Pangoro. So I launch body slam number 1, knocking out the Ninetales, go for body slam number 2 into Pangoro as it gets brought back in. If they survive, they can win the game, but they do not. That was a very nice ABB team from my opponent. We move to the next game, and what is with the fire type leads today? Normally, I feel like every time I see a weird type on the lead, it's because that type is causing me trouble, but this time, it's the reverse. I actually have really good matchups into all these fire types. My opponent safe switches a Morgrim. I guess Morgrim, if it's going to do one thing, it's going to be baiting out the Tinkaton. I go for an undercharge on Gigaton Hammer, but the move is just too powerful, it takes the knockout anyway. Back in comes the Talonflame. I'm going to be launching Gigaton Hammer. This will do insane resisted damage, and then I'm looking to pivot out. Talonflame actually put up the shield. Because Castform is mono water and not a mono electric like Lantern, I don't actually have a resistance to flying, so I will shield up as they go for the fly, and in the back, my opponent has Aegislash. Now, Aegislash is a Pokemon that is incredibly powerful, but they're down a lot of energy, and I still have a Protect Shield to work with. These water guns are kind of shredding through this Aegislash. I don't know if this is just a bad IV Aegislash or if Castform is just popping off right now, but Castform is putting in some serious work. I farm up into the Tinkaton and get the game-winning catch. Now Aegislash can't really do anything. They had their charge stack caught. They're now in the blade form, which is very, very glassy, that I can bring back in the cast form. My opponent's only ability to reset this Aegislash back into the shield form would be to pivot out, but that means switching a Shadow Talonflame into a loaded cast form. So by getting the catch on a Tinkaton, we just completely slammed the door. It turns out we're not even gonna need the Licky Licky this game. The cast form Tinkaton duo just gets the 2v3 sweep. Down goes Talonflame. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We get a pretty awkward lead in the next match, Rainy Castform into Altaria. I believe Rainy Castform can actually win the 2-shield into Altaria, but it's still not really a matchup where I want to stay in and try and play it out. So I save switch into Licky Licky. They don't switch out, so I land a body slam just to get a little bit of chip damage to hopefully put that Altaria into Gigaton range later in the game. They land Sky Attack, they send out the Castform, and this is what I'm talking about. I am starting to see a lot of Castforms on ladder. Castforms were used at the Utrecht Regionals. I've seen multiple Castforms on ladder. There's just rain everywhere, and I don't understand. Now I'm in a Rainy Castform mirror. Ideally, I would love it if I could knock out with Weather Ball before they make the Thunder. I have to hope Weather Ball will take the knockout, but the moment I click the move, I know in my heart of hearts, this is not knocking out. That was a pretty catastrophic misplay from me. What I should have done is just shielded the Thunder and overfarmed massively, but instead, I end up tanking that damage, and now I need Tinkaton to try and 1v3. Tinkaton is one of the best Pokemon in the Great League. If anyone can 1v3, it's probably Tinkaton, but unfortunately, I think with Lapras and Altaria being so bulky, I'm really going to struggle to try and pull this off. I fire off Gigaton Hammer, Lapras will put up the shield. The good news is this is the regular Lapras. Regular Lapras only does 1 damage per Psywave, if I'm not mistaken, to Tinkaton, versus Shadow Lapras would do 2. I am actually able to land a Gigaton Hammer onto the Lapras, so the Lapras is now very low. In comes Altaria, but I'm so far behind in terms of energy. I farm up to the Gigaton, I bait with the Bulldoze, I'm trying to pull out all the stops here. Bulldoze is going to be shielded. Unfortunately, I do not get the catch, and that's going to force me to burn my final shield. I was anticipating my opponent would overfarm more, but unfortunately, they did not. My opponent is very close to a move on their Lapras, so I'm going to need to try and predict when they throw it. I decide that they're going to overfarm massively, so I just farm up and they throw right away, and unfortunately that is going to be a loss. It turns out I am the worst Castform player, as my opponent will be able to take the win. We move to the next match, leading Castform into Shadow Primeape. Again, a matchup I'm very happy to stay in with, because this is going to keep my Licky Licky off of this Primeape. Primeape builds up to the close combat, but I just simply don't buy it. I know shield, it's the Rage Fist, and calling that bait just puts you in such a nice spot. The water gun pressure has already added up so much. Primeape has already lost 50% of its HP, and I haven't even landed a charge stack yet. I decide that I will play for the ones. I should be able to win the ones here and barely outpace the Primeape. So I farm up to the Weather Ball, but they catch onto Feraligatr. The good news is I have a very strong answer to Feraligatr. I will just be able to send in the Licky Licky. Licky Licky has a very dominant matchup here and is made even more dominant by the fact that they caught the Weather Ball. Suddenly, they're in rollout plus double body slam range, meaning that they're never going to get that second Hydro Cannon. That's going to be quite unfortunate for my opponent because that's going to leave my Licky Licky outside of Ice Punch range. They're not going to be able to farm down either. They're going to have to fire off a close combat or get some really good damage in with that Primeape if they want to try and get the win. This is pretty close to Ice Punch range now with the Karate Chops, so I decided to let it go. My opponent's actually on Cross Chop on the Primeape, and that is not a moveset I was expecting. I send in Tinkaton, hoping to snipe down, but Primeape hangs on 1 HP to land a Cross Chop. In the back is Aegislash, and this is going to be a bit of a tricky game. However, I have the ability to hit for super effective with Bulldoze, and I still have access to a Rainy Castform. My first Bulldoze does debuff, so a bit of good luck does go my way. The Water Gun pressure from Castform will be very important later on, as I end up going 2 for 2 on the Bulldoze debuffs. That is very, very nice for me. I fire off a third Bulldoze. My opponent still not going to be shielding. This time we get a third Bulldoze debuff. We are batting 100% on Bulldoze debuffs in this game. Aegislash just getting crushed under the weight of Bulldozes. And from here, I can just Water Gun down with the Castform and take the win. That endgame was looking to be a little bit complicated, but sometimes good luck just goes your way. We get 3 Bulldoze debuffs, Water Gun down, and take the win. We get a blast from the past in the next match, leading Castform into Marowak. My opponent safe switches into a Shadow Bugbite Fortress, and I feel like I have stepped back in time to last season. The most powerful toxic team from last season was Marowak, Bugbite Shadow Fortress, and a Bastiodon or Carbink in the back. With Bastiodon being dead, I assume it can't be the Bastiodon back there, so it must be a Carbink. If that's the case, then I'm in a very, very good spot, because as long as I can get shields down from my opponents, they're just going to get absolutely destroyed by Gigaton Hammers. Carbink doesn't want to take Gigaton Hammer, Marowak doesn't want to take that either. I fire off the back-to-back body slams just to get them low, and then I should be able to go for a 1 shield farm down with the Castform. Even though I'm now switch locked, I should be able to get some pretty nice damage into either the Fortress or into what I'm expecting is going to be a Carbink in the back, just because I exit pretty healthy and with a lot of energy. In the back, what do you know? It's the Carbink. Opponent bringing out the degeneracy from last season, but unfortunately it is not going to work. They end up taking a move on Carbink, try to snipe down with a Fortress, but Castform had too much energy. Castform gets the shield. They try and get the farm down, but I can pivot out and send in Tinkaton. At this point, the game is completely lost, but my opponent is somehow staying it out and playing to the bitter end. They go for a Rock Tomb, but a Rock Tomb is not going to save them. I launch Gigaton Hammer. Gigaton will easily take the knockout. Back in comes the Carbink. There's the top left. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We move to the next match, leading Castform into Corsola. Ideally, I would love nothing more than to try and go for a Nightshade catch onto Licky Licky. If I'm able to absorb energy there, my opponent should have a strong answer to Licky Licky in the back, but wasting Corsola energy will usually result in a pretty good game. I try and go for the catch, I'm unsuccessful. My opponent now sends in a Togekiss, but Togekiss is honestly not the worst here. I'm going to be putting up the shield, heavily double shielding as needed, because I need to keep this Licky Licky as healthy as I possibly can. My opponent did give me a pretty significant energy head start on the Licky Licky, and I intend to put that to good use. The rollouts are adding up, getting them lower and lower. Unfortunately, this is going to come down to a 50-50 call. Do I go for the Shadow Ball or the Body Slam? I decide to full send, hoping my opponent tries to call the Body Slam, but they put up the shield. I bank the Body Slam, switch it to the Castform as they fire off the Aura Sphere. Preserving health on the Licky Licky should hopefully be what wins me this game. In the back is Quagsire. This is not great, but the fact that I have a very healthy Licky Licky is the only thing that's going to save me from all that Corsola energy. Quagsire overfarms. They don't even need to go for the Mud Bomb here. They can just fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail will take the knockout. I send Tinkaton into one of its worst meta matchups. But with all the damage I've already done onto the Quagsire with the Rainy Castform, I have put my opponent very low. Mud Bomb lands. That just does heinous amounts of damage onto the Tinkaton. I fire back with a Bulldoze. They're going to be banking an Aqua Tail and sniping with the Corsola. Will this take the knockout? It's going to be very close. Nightshade lands, Tinkaton survives, there's the snipe, and in comes Licky Licky, and I'm able to make the Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball is going to be the end of Corsola. If my opponent brings in the Togekiss, they should be completely energy dry. Togekiss needs 10 turns to make the Aura Sphere, but I need 9 for the Body Slam. I outpace by 1 singular turn. Body Slam takes the KO. In comes Quagsire, and the game comes down to this. If I live the Aqua Tail, I win the game. I live the Aqua Tail, the rollout takes the knockout, and despite a pretty scary lead, we're able to fight back and get the win. Hopping to the final match, we've got Rainy Castform into Shadow Fortress one final time. Again, this is a pretty okay matchup for the Castform. Being able to significantly outpace the Fortress is really nice, and Weather Ball will get them pretty low, and they can't really Bug Bite me into Rock Tomb range. So I feel pretty comfortable just absorbing the energy, saving the Castform, and then sending in Licky Licky. I will need to fire off a Body Slam before they're able to make the Rock Tomb, but that won't be a problem. But my opponent makes such an incredibly smart play here. They CMP tie Sand Tomb to the Body Slam, knowing that's when I would throw because I couldn't let them make the Rock Tomb. This way, they can just let the Fortress go, and I'm already debuffed. They send in Shadow Hydreigon. That is an incredibly cool Pokemon. I fire off the Body Slam, just trying to get whatever damage that I can. They end up no shielding, Switch Timer, not quite available, so I'm just going to let the Licky Licky go and hope that Tinkaton is good in the back. I send in Tinkaton. My opponent's going to pit it out. In the back is Galarian Moltres, and it appears I have been a bit bailed out by the fact that they are very weak to Tinkaton in the back. My opponent genuinely played extremely well in this game. The decision to CMP tie there was such a smart one. Here, I end up getting the game-winning catch. Did we need this catch? No, we did not, but we're going out with some style points. Back in comes Tinkaton. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. So, now that I've played quite a few sets with this team and ended up going very positive, I went 10-5 across my first 3 sets with the team, up to, I think it was 3284 ELO. The question remains, why are top players using Rainy Castform? And the good news is, I think I have actually come to a bit of an answer. I think what Rainy Castform allows players to do in the Go Battle League is run a Pokemon that's very similar to Lantern, but without the weaknesses that come from being a water electric type. Currently, with Quagsire being as powerful and as neutral as it is, stacking up a bunch of ground weaknesses on a team of 3 is usually not going to be a recipe for success. But if you ignore the ground type weakness, Lantern plus Tinkaton form a nearly unbreakable core. The bulk, the fast move pressure of Lantern spamming out water guns, and Tinkaton's ability to shut down the Pokemon the Lantern doesn't want to see, that core is basically perfect, except for the big problem, and that is the ground types. And that's where a Pokemon like Rainy Castform comes in. Rainy Castform still has some pretty solid bulk, it is very similar coverage to the Lantern, but what it does not have is the weakness to ground, and that is actually very valuable in this meta. So, I think I have found the answer. Trainers are using it as kind of a pseudo-Lantern that doesn't have the weakness to Quagsire. A water gun user that has electric coverage that can still fight back against the ground. You know, the Stunfisks of the world, the Quagsires of the world, without getting shredded by super effective ground damage. It's a pretty innovative idea. This team did end up going very positive for me. I believe I mentioned went 10-5 across the first 3 sets that I ran with it. So the question remains, would I recommend Rainy Castform? I think Rainy Castform is an interesting anti-meta core breaker. I do think it definitely has its limits, like there's some neutral matchups like Corsola where it definitely does suffer just because it doesn't quite have the power level of a lot of other Pokemon. But I do think it is a pretty playable anti-meta Pokemon. It doesn't have the power level to compete with the best of the best, but it can be a cog as a part of a winning team if you support it with good teammates. And for example, Tinkaton is a Pokemon that it has absolutely incredible synergy with. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys, oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.